A once thriving planet, now reduced to rubble and ruin. The sky is dark, choked with the debris of warships, the ground a scorched wasteland where nothing grows. Silence reigns, broken only by the distant crackle of energy storms swirling on the horizon. This world had been the battlefield of alien factions for years, and now, it's been abandoned, a desolate graveyard. 2 alien factions once warred here, their battles raging for dominance. But as they fought, both sides adhered to a brutal belief: only the strongest survive. The weak, the young, those unable to fight, none were worth saving. In the chaos of retreat, those left behind were considered disposable. Among them, an alien pup, barely a few weeks old, clung to life. Its deformity was clear, a twisted, malformed limb that rendered it unable to walk properly. But that was not all. Its eyes flickered with a strange, unearthly glow, something neither faction had cared to understand. The pup lay in the dust, ribs showing through its skin, struggling to breathe. Its body was battered, its deformity an excuse for its kind to abandon it. Alone, it whimpered softly, its voice barely audible over the wind. Too young to understand why it had been left behind, it lay helpless, waiting for the inevitable. The alien factions had long since departed, their cold pragmatism clear. It was survival of the fittest, and the pup, in their eyes, was unworthy of survival. But far from this heartless species, another group approached. A small human exploration crew, sent to salvage what they could from the war-torn planet, touched down nearby. Their ship hummed as it landed, kicking up dust from the barren soil. The crew was hardened, seasoned from countless missions in dangerous territories. Still, their hearts hadn't hardened, at least, not completely. Captain Mason stepped out first, surveying the wasteland with sharp eyes. Beside him, Daniels, the engineer, muttered something about the planet's hostile atmosphere, while Patel, the medic, checked her gear, always prepared for the unexpected. They'd come here looking for abandoned technology, scraps of data that could be useful. But they found something entirely different. A faint, pitiful sound reached their ears. At first, Mason thought it was just the wind. But Patel, ever the soft-hearted one, insisted they investigate. They followed the sound and stumbled upon the alien pup, barely alive, curled up in the dust. It was a pitiful sight, eyes half closed, breathing labored. "Is it alive?" Daniels asked, crouching down beside it. "Just barely," Patel responded, her voice heavy with empathy. The pup's body trembled weakly, too exhausted to react to their presence. For a moment, they stood there, unsure of what to do. This wasn't their mission. They were supposed to collect data and leave. There were protocols for these situations, strict ones. Helping a stray creature wasn't in the guidelines. Yet something held them there, staring at the fragile life before them. "We can't just leave it," Patel said softly, already reaching for her medkit. "Patel, we don't even know what it is," Mason warned, his tone cautious but not unsympathetic. "We have a mission. This planet's dangerous. And we don't know what kind of attention that thing might attract." Patel hesitated, but only for a second. "It's not dangerous. Look at it, it's dying. We have to help," Daniels chimed in. "We don't have the resources for this. If we take it on board, we're putting ourselves at risk." The captain was silent for a moment, weighing their options. The logical thing was to leave the pup. But logic wasn't always enough. They weren't like the alien factions that had fought here. They were human. They were different. "All right," Mason finally said. "We take it with us. But if this complicates our mission, we're heading out." Patel didn't wait for further discussion. She carefully scooped up the pup, cradling its frail body in her arms. It shuddered but didn't resist, too weak to fight. Despite the risks, despite the unknowns, the decision was made. Compassion had won out over cold pragmatism. As they carried the pup back to their ship, a flicker of life seemed to return to its eyes. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the alien pup wasn't alone. It had been abandoned by its kind, left to die in the dust. But humanity wasn't so quick to give up on life. The pup's condition was worse than expected. Patel worked tirelessly to stabilize it, but its alien biology presented challenges she wasn't prepared for. Standard human medical supplies didn't match the creature's needs, and she had to improvise, mixing different compounds and running scans, hoping to find something that would help. Every breath the pup took was shallow, labored, as if the very act of living was a struggle. Its body, though small, seemed to reject the simplest treatments, leaving Patel frustrated and worried. Daniels watched from the sidelines, arms crossed, a skeptical frown on his face. "We don't even know what it eats. What if we're just prolonging its suffering?" Patel shook her head, refusing to give up. "It's not suffering. Not yet. We just need time to figure this out." But time wasn't a luxury they had. The crew had limited rations, limited medical supplies, and the longer they stayed, the greater the risks. They were, after all, on a hostile planet, one that could turn dangerous at any moment. The captain had already voiced his concerns, warning Patel that their mission was still a priority. A few days in, doubts began to creep into even Patel's mind. The pup remained weak, barely moving, its eyes distant, and its body still trembling. Feeding it was difficult. Most of what they tried was either rejected or made the creature sicker. Patel began to question whether they were doing more harm than good. Daniels, ever the pragmatist, kept reminding her that this wasn't their responsibility. They could still cut their losses, move on before it became too much of a burden. But then something changed. One morning, after another long night of trying to keep the pup warm and fed, it lifted its head ever so slightly. Its eyes, still glowing faintly, met Patel's gaze. It wasn't much, but it was enough to push her forward. Over the next few days, the pup's strength began to return, little by little. Its movements were still sluggish, but it responded more to the crew's presence. Patel spoke to it softly as she fed it, and though the pup couldn't understand her words, it seemed to recognize the tone, the kindness. It began to eat more steadily, its breathing less labored, its body less frail. Daniels, despite his initial doubts, started spending more time near the pup, watching it with cautious curiosity. He wasn't ready to admit it, but he was beginning to warm to the little creature. Even Captain Mason, who had maintained his professional distance, found himself drawn to the quiet moments when the pup would nuzzle against Patel's hand or mimic the crew's simple movements, as if trying to fit in. Patel noticed the changes first. The pup was learning, slowly but surely. It reacted to sounds, to names. Its once lifeless eyes began to show intelligence, curiosity. It would turn its head when called, follow movements with surprising precision. It even began to mimic some of their actions, simple things at first, like copying Patel's gesture when she offered food or mimicking the way Daniels moved his tools. The bond was growing, and with it, trust. Each small step forward felt like a victory. Patel would sit with the pup for hours, talking to it as if it were a child. The others followed her lead, interacting with the creature in small but meaningful ways. Then came the first sign that this wasn't just any ordinary creature. One night, as Patel tended to the pup, something extraordinary happened. The dim glow in the pup's eyes flared, just for a moment, and objects around it, small tools, pieces of equipment, shifted ever so slightly. At first, Patel thought it was her imagination, but then it happened again. The pup wasn't just healing, it was demonstrating abilities. Abilities far beyond anything they had anticipated. It started small. A cup moved an inch across the table. Then a light flickered, as if in response to the pup's focus. Daniels noticed too, raising an eyebrow but saying nothing at first. Patel, though startled, felt a growing excitement. This wasn't just a deformed creature, this was something more, something powerful. Over the next few days, the pup's abilities became more apparent. It could move objects without touching them, control the flow of energy around the ship, and in some moments, it seemed to sense things before they happened. The deformity they had once pitted was no deformity at all, it was an adaptation. A gift. The crew began to theorize. Could this be why the pup had been abandoned? Had its species seen this power as a threat? Or were they too blind to understand what it truly represented? The thought troubled Mason. If they had stumbled upon this by chance, who else might be aware of the pup's potential? Their questions were soon answered. The ship's scanners picked up a signal. Something was approaching. A fleet. Alien scavengers, likely drawn to the planet's remnants, were now in range. Mason's eyes narrowed as he examined the readings. This wasn't a coincidence. The others felt it too, the shift in the air. They had thought they were alone, but now it was clear that others were searching. For them? For the pup? They couldn't be sure. But one thing was certain: they were no longer safe. Mason ordered the crew to prepare. Whatever was coming, they would be ready. As the ship's engines powered up and the crew readied themselves, Patel glanced back at the pup, its eyes still glowing softly. Whatever the future held, they wouldn't abandon it. Not now. Not ever. The crew's tension spiked as the scavenger fleet touched down on the planet's surface. They had hoped it was a routine salvage operation, but that hope quickly vanished. Patel, scanning the communications from the ships, froze when she deciphered a transmission. They weren't here for scraps. They were looking for the pup. They know, she whispered, her voice tight with worry. They're after it. Mason's expression darkened. The crew huddled around the terminal, the weight of the situation settling in. These scavengers weren't here by accident. The pup, the strange and powerful creature they had saved, was now the center of an unfolding conflict. We need to leave, Daniels said, pacing nervously. We're outnumbered. They're better equipped, and they'll stop at nothing to get what they want. We can't win this. But Patel stood firm. We can't just abandon it. After everything we've done, everything it's been through? No. We can't let them take it. Mason, caught between his duty and his instincts, looked between the two. We have to weigh our options. Leaving it might buy us enough time to escape. But taking it with us will put a target on our backs. Silence fell. The pup, lying quietly in the corner, seemed unaware of the chaos surrounding it, but its presence filled the room. Patel broke the silence. We've come this far. We're not like them. We don't leave the weak behind. A decision was made. They would protect the pup, no matter the cost. Moments later, an alien voice crackled through the comm system. It was a scavenger captain, issuing a demand. You have something of value. Surrender it to us, and we'll let you live. Mason's jaw clenched. We're not giving you anything. The scavenger captain's voice grew cold. This is your only warning. Hand over the pup, or we'll take it by force. Patel's heart pounded as Mason killed the transmission. Outside, the scavenger forces began moving toward them. Heavily armed, they outnumbered the small human crew. But the humans had one thing on their side: ingenuity. They're expecting us to be scared, to hand it over without a fight, Mason said, his voice low but determined. We're going to surprise them. The crew quickly prepared. They knew they couldn't face the scavengers head-on, so they'd have to rely on guerrilla tactics. Daniels rigged up makeshift explosives from the ship's spare parts while Patel secured the pup, wrapping it in a protective blanket. Every second felt like an hour as they braced for the inevitable clash. The first confrontation erupted without warning. The scavengers charged in, their weapons glowing with alien energy, but the humans fought back with creativity and precision. Explosions rocked the ground as Daniel's traps caught the scavengers off guard. Mason led the crew with calm resolve, directing them to use the landscape to their advantage, turning the barren wasteland into a maze of obstacles for their enemies. Despite the crew's best efforts, the scavengers began to press harder. Outnumbered and low on supplies, the humans couldn't hold them off forever. We need to move! Mason shouted as another wave of alien troops closed in. With no time to spare, the crew made a split-second decision. They couldn't stay and fight a prolonged battle. Their only hope was to escape. Together, they raced toward their ship, the pup cradled in Patel's arms, its eyes wide with fear. Behind them, the scavengers gave chase, their ships taking to the skies in pursuit. The humans ran through the debris-laden terrain, dodging fire from the scavengers' ships as they sped toward the safety of their vessel. The crew's determination kept them going, each of them risking their lives for the pup they had saved. Patel shielded the pup as best she could, ducking behind cover whenever alien blasts hit too close. Daniels and Mason provided cover fire, working together with a precision that came only from years of survival in hostile environments. Just when it seemed like they wouldn't make it, a blast from a scavenger ship came too close, sending them all stumbling. The pup, sensing the imminent danger, suddenly lifted its head. Its eyes, which had flickered faintly before, now blazed with intensity. The ground trembled as the pup unleashed its hidden power. A shimmering wave of energy burst from the creature, rippling outwards with an almost primal force. The scavenger ships, which had been closing in, were thrown back as if struck by an invisible hand. Weapons malfunctioned, circuits fried, and the pursuing scavengers were left scrambling, caught off guard by the unexpected display of power. The crew stood stunned for a moment, watching in awe as the pup's powers rippled through the air. It had saved them, instinctively, without hesitation. The pup's earlier weakness now seemed like a distant memory. In its place was a force far greater than they had imagined. Mason looked at Patel, eyes wide with realization. "This changes everything." Patel nodded, cradling the pup closer. "We're not leaving it behind." "Not now." The scavengers, recovering from the shockwave, began regrouping, but the humans had bought enough time. With the pup's powers shielding them, they made the final dash to their ship, boarding just as the engines roared to life. The scavengers, disoriented and scrambling, could only watch as the human ship lifted off, taking the pup far beyond their reach. The crew was safe, for now. But they knew this was only the beginning. They had seen what the pup could do, and so had their enemies. As the ship rocketed into the sky, Mason turned to his crew. "We've made our choice. Now we live with it." Patel, her gaze never leaving the pup, whispered, "We'll protect it. No matter what." The crew's decision was final. They could no longer evade the scavengers or live in fear. It was time to make a stand. They had limited resources but plenty of ingenuity. Using their ship's systems and the harsh environment of the planet, they set up a series of traps and defensive positions. The barren landscape was transformed into a fortress of makeshift defenses, designed to give them the edge they needed. The pup, now fully recovered and bonded with the crew, was not an observer but an active participant. Its abilities had grown, and its bond with the humans made it a critical asset. Patel and Daniels worked to integrate the pup's powers into their defense strategy, while Mason prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The crew was ready, resolved to fight for the creature they had saved. The scavengers' attack came with overwhelming force. They were determined to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. As they charged at the human stronghold, the air was filled with the sound of weapons and explosions. The scavengers were well equipped and aggressive, but the humans fought back with everything they had. Mason directed the defense, using the traps they had set to their full advantage. Explosions erupted as scavengers were caught off guard by the cleverly concealed devices. Daniels and Patel coordinated the defense, moving with precision and speed. The battle was fierce, but the humans' strategic use of the environment began to turn the tide. Amidst the chaos, the pup demonstrated its full potential. It used its powers to control the flow of energy around the battlefield, disrupting the scavengers' advanced weaponry. A wave of energy surged through the air, neutralizing several enemy ships and rendering their weapons useless. The scavengers, initially confident, were now in disarray. The pup's powers were the game-changer the humans needed. The battle raged on, but the humans' determination and the pup's newfound strength gave them an edge. The scavengers, though formidable, began to falter. The humans pressed their advantage, pushing the invaders back. Every strategic move, every burst of energy from the pup, and every coordinated effort from the crew brought them closer to victory. Finally, the battle reached its climax. The scavengers, beaten and battered, withdrew from the battlefield, unable to overcome the combined might of the human ingenuity and the pup's extraordinary abilities. The humans stood victorious, but the cost had been high. They were exhausted, their ship damaged, but they had prevailed. As they surveyed the aftermath, the crew reflected on their journey. Their compassion for the pup had led them through perilous situations, and in the end, It was their humanity that had saved them. The pup, despite its cruel origins, had become a symbol of hope and resilience. In their victory, the crew learned a startling truth: the pup's species was feared across the galaxy, not for their cruelty alone, but for their immense potential for power. The pup's abilities had been misunderstood and undervalued by its own kind, but now they were a beacon of hope. With the battle over, the crew vowed to protect and nurture the pup. It was no longer just a rescued creature but a symbol of unity and strength. The crew's bond with the pup was stronger than ever, and they were determined to ensure its future was filled with hope and growth. As they prepared to leave the planet, the atmosphere was filled with a sense of accomplishment and optimism. The pup, now fully integrated into their lives, looked toward the future with its human family. Together, they were embarking on a new chapter, one that promised unity and strength. The ship ascended from the desolate planet, leaving behind a world forever changed by the courage and compassion of its visitors. The pup, nestled safely among its human friends, was a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the promise of a brighter future.